Shabbat Shalom, guys. My name is Alexander Hernandez. I am a youth leader for Casa de Israel Yara. Today we're going to talk about Parasha Behar. This week's Torah portion is interesting because it talks about the Shabbat, the Shemitah, and the Year of Jubilee. And basically, the Shemitah is, in addition to the weekly seventh day Shabbat, which is important, and as we have been basically studying in our youth and classes in Casa de Israel Yara, we have been trying to listen and read to the gospel and the good news that Yeshua, our Messiah, brought us. And so our main concept is trying to understand is Yeshua, or Jesus, the Messiah, or Christ as many know him. Is he against the Torah, or is he in favor of it? And whether his dialogue in the gospel connects to the Torah, or is it something that is totally different, or that he's coming to eliminate? Why are we studying this? Because as a teacher, I personally want to do my best to encourage my students as much as I can. My knowledge is not to the level of the great teachers that we have in the Hebrew Roots movement. I am still learning, and I'm happy to be a student. But my goal, if I'm going to instill something into my youth, and into any of the youth that is in the Hebrew Roots movement or in any other movement that is biblically based, is for us to understand that there is a spiritual side to the word, and that there is an emotional feeling about the word, but we have to understand the structure of what the word is, right? What is the purpose? The purpose of the word is important because we're trying to accomplish something. We're trying to go somewhere, right? And in the big picture, we're trying to unite with Elohim, with God, and be in his kingdom, right? Some may believe that is in the sky. Some believe that is in the earth. So we have to use an important tool when we study scripture to understand these points, and it's common sense, right? If we understand common sense and we leave our emotion at the door when we're studying, right? Because when we're studying, if we are coming in with emotions, our personal thoughts and feelings and opinions, we're going to miss the message that the Father has for us, right? And so the goal for the study and the discussion that I'm going to have with you guys is to bring you awareness of 2 points, right? And I'm going to give you some information about culturally and historically what the topics of this portion are about. But the 2 things that I want you guys to understand, and I hope I do my best to present them to you, is obedience and maturity, right? Those are the two things that we're going to talk about that I feel I want to present for you today: obedience and maturity. So a little bit of a background and information of what the Shemitah year, for all these you young people that don't know about it, the Shemitah, the holy convocation of the 7th month, every 7th year. The land was commanded to rest and remain fallow. The 7th year was called Shemitah, a word that means to let go or to withdraw. The Shemitah was a full calendar year in which Jewish farmers were to abstain from all farming in order to let the land rest. So culturally, the biblical culture, right? Because we have to understand that the people in the Bible have a different culture to today, right? So before we can even try to apply it today, right? Before we can even get to scripture and apply it to us today, we have to understand what's going on here, right? Because the concepts that are being used in the culture of the biblical story is what's going to help us discern, if that's the correct word, our connection to the word, right? To the message, right? So first things first is the biblical times are agricultural, right? It's totally different from now, right? Now we have a lot of easy and a lot of technology, right? And a lot of we depend on the phone, on the computer, on the laptop. You know, we have a different world today. We have machines that help us do agricultural work. You know what I mean? We have basically an easier way to live in a way, right? Compared to them, which it was rigorous. It was they had to work for what they got. So the land was work. They were a farmer, so it was a farming community, a farming culture. So the land, right? We are given us as creation, right? The Bible, the whole Bible, speaks of the day of Shabbat, which is the day of rest, the day that the Father, right, the creator of heaven and earth, has decided for us to have, right? The Shabbat is for us to rest in his presence, right? And something very beautiful that I personally learned is that when we, us believers in Yeshua, our Messiah, in Jesus, the Christ, when we say that we believe in him, right, we're saved by grace, but we are saved to be obedient, right? And so it takes a lot of maturity to understand this concept. Why? Because religion and many cultures that have come before us has taught us to stray away from what the Bible says, right? And so if we use the tool that I brought to you in the beginning, which is common sense, it doesn't make sense for us to say we believe in something but don't listen to what that something says to us to apply or live by, right? And so the word gives us a great direction and a great tool to not only get closer to God, but in the sense it gives us an identity which not makes us better than anybody, but it gives us a different look in the world, right? So Shabbat is a sign to a covenant that we have with the Father, right? Shabbat, when you keep Shabbat, you're letting the world know that Yehovah, Yahweh, Elohim, God is real, and that He is enthroned in His heavenly kingdom. That He is real, right? When we keep the Sabbath, we're saying the Bible is not only a book filled with stories. The Bible is a historical, legal document, and that's very important because what Yeshua did for us, when we keep the Sabbath, we do justice to that. So it's very important. And so here in this portion, it reminds us of that, but it reminds us of the land, right? Because just like the land, it gives us what we need, right? On behalf of the Father, the land needs rest. The land needs to be taken care of as well, because that's what gives us the fruit that we use to nourish ourselves and our families, right? And so they, in their agricultural system, had to understand that they had to let the land rest, right? And by doing that, right, and it's very interesting because when you think about it, they live over the farming, right, or agriculture. So when you live for something and by something, and the Father is telling you, okay, on the seventh year, you're gonna let this rest, right? And you're going to stop doing for 1 year what you do basically on a regular basis. Right? You're gonna stop and you're gonna let the land rest. Right? You're gonna let yourself lay back and let me control and let the land become fruitful and rest. Is that making sense? Elohim is basically letting us know, depend on me, right? Trust in me. right? And it's very hard for us to do that in our day and age, right? We are taught that, we have to, go out there and make money, get our careers, get our degrees, right? And I personally have lived this, that I say that, I can't work on the Sabbath, or that I'm not going to work on the biblical feast, days, because there are appointed times that God told me that I have to be there. And when I say that to people and they see how serious I personally am about it, they look at me like I'm crazy. And they look at me like, and I've heard this phrase many times. It's like, I am a believer. They tell me they're believers, and they tell me, but it's not that serious, right? I believe that God doesn't want me to stop working, or, I think God cares about me and what I want and what I need. And so it is a mentality that I'm reading this book of the ancient Near East that Rico recommended me, and it's interesting that in the ancient Near East, people served their deities or their gods in a relationship based on I take care of you, and that way you are nourished, right? They used to bring food, they used to bring sacrifices, and they believed that the gods will basically eat these sacrifices and take these sacrifices, and these deities were satisfied. And as they were satisfied, they had the power and the desire to keep on maintaining the land and keep on maintaining the people and providing for the people, right? That was the mentality of the ancient Near East. And so it's not a new thing when Israel is being told to basically bring sacrifices, like we have read in this book, to build temples. Temples were a thing back in ancient Near East. Everybody had temples, but the difference was that Elohim was letting the Israelites know, listen, the way they do things is much different than I want you to do things. I want you to understand that I am the creator of heaven and earth. There's only one, right? There's not many deities. There's not many gods. There's only one God. Only one. And I am the provider and the one that controls everything. All I want you to do is maintain it, take care of it, and listen to me. And that's very important, because we have lost the ability to listen. We have lost the ability to obey, right? And the two words that I told you in the beginning was obedience and maturity, right? So, with that being said, the Shemitah, right? So you let the land rest. During the Shemitah year, no work on the land could be done. No farming, planting, or cultivation. Any natural occurring produce grows during this year does not belong to the owner of the land, but is regarded as the Lord's, and therefore anyone who wants to and can come and pick some without charge. Farmers cannot sell the fruit or control access to the land. The Shemitah was more than a year of cessation from agricultural labor. However, since all outstanding debts were canceled during this year as well, all loans were forgiven in the Shemitah year, and no lender of money could demand repayment from the debtor. So there is two options from the agricultural side of it, and the land what will grow. Everybody, whether you be poor, low income, you were able to go into the fields and take of the fruit that was being basically cultivated by Elohim, and it was free, right? The lenders of the landowners cannot tell you that you have to pay a certain amount of money for whatever was growing in that time. And so it's very important, because now Elohim is showing us an aspect that religion does, the religious system does imply, which is mercy, justice, and righteousness, meaning that you have 7 years, 6 years to, work, just like we have 6 days to work. And the seventh day and in the 7th year, you rest. And so you depend on the Father. And the same thing happens with the Shemitah year. You're given that 7th year to rest, and in that year, everything that comes out and that the fruit that the earth gives is free for those that are in need. Those that are in debt are free of debt. Those that are hungry can come and eat without being worried about having to pay or pay their dues, So they have that type of freedom. And according to the sages, the Lord promised Israel that the harvest of the year before the Shemitah will be bountiful, that it will last for 3 full years. In addition, during the Shemitah year, everyone will feel satisfied and the land will dwell safely from Israel's enemies. Finally, it is said that the Mashiach will come to the end of a Shemitah year, so those who observe the mitzvah are helping bring him into the world. So it's very important. Now, the observance of the Shemitah was a real test of faith, like I've said, since it meant that the Israelites had to completely trust Elohim that he will provide them despite of abandoning their usual farming and banking practices. Sadly, the people did not observe the laws of the Shemitah, and this eventually led to 70-year captivity in Babylon, and 1 year in captivity for each year that Shemitah was disregarded. This implies that for at least 490 years before the siege of Nabucodonosor in 606 BC, the Jews had failed to keep the Shemitah, and the Lord required midah keneg midah, like for like punishment, 1 year of captivity for each year the land was forced to serve. So this is where our first point comes, which is obedience, right? And so when we read the Bible, many people say they believe in it, but they don't understand that, when you read the word, you have to understand that it's speaking to you, right? The story, and you have to understand the culture and the time that they're living politically. Like I said, you have to understand that maybe it's an agricultural system. You have to understand the conflict, but when Elohim says he's speaking to Israel or he's speaking to his people, you have to put yourself in those shoes and understand that he's talking to you and letting you know what you can and can't do, and what you should apply or what you shouldn't apply. And so Israel was given this command of keeping the land to rest, and they were not observing it. And so then comes the year of Jubilee, or the Jovel. After seven of these 7 sabbatical cycles, right? So after 7 Shemitahs, right? Because Shemitah is every 7 years. Elapsed a 50th year called the Yovel, or the Jubilee year, would occur, at which time work and land also will cease. In addition to the Shemitah, servants will be set free, and original tribune inheritance in the land will be restored to the original owners. Just as Shavuot comes the 50th day of the Shefirah HaOmer and represents the departure from the natural world into the divine. Right, so the year of Jubilee is declared on Yom Kippur. So it says, you shall sound the shofar the 10th day of the 7th month of the Day of Atonement, and you shall sound the shofar throughout all your land, and you shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. Therefore it shall be a jubilee for you, and you shall return every man to his state, and you shall return every man to his family. Right, this is Leviticus 25 verse 8 through 10. Where does the Yovel year get his name? According to Rashi, from the sounding of the shofar or a ram's horn called Yovel. So in the year of Jubilee, not only the debts were forgiven, but every slave was set free, and the inhabitants were free. So this happened usually in the ancient years. It would happen every time a new king was enthroned, or replaced or established. Right. So I want to read Luke Give me 1 second. Luke chapter 4. So Luke chapter 4, verse 16 through 21. It's going to be very important because, we've talked about the Shemitah, we talked about the Shabbat, we talked about the year of Jubilee, right? So we're going to go into, and again, let me clarify, all of this is in the Torah in the Old Testament, right? Which is, usually called the Old Testament. So now we're going to go into the New Testament and read something very interesting from Jesus or Yeshua. So Luke chapter 4, verse 16 to 21, it says, "And Yeshua came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as he was his custom, he went to the synagogue on the Shabbat day. And he stood up to read," right? So, okay, before we move forward, 1, he was in Nazareth. 2, he was at a synagogue, right? Yeshua was a rabbi, right? And in our studies, at Casa de Israel Jara, we have established this, but for the sake of reviewing, right? So a synagogue is for where the predominantly Jewish or Israelite Orthodox believers used to go, right? Or go to basically separate themselves and teach. So Yeshua is going to a synagogue, right? On the Shabbat day. So he is keeping the Torah. Just want to make sure we understand this. And then, so he stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. So for him to read from the scroll, and like I said, there's a lot of deep stuff that we can go into, technical things, but we're going to stay basic. For Yeshua to read the scroll, he had to be a rabbi, a teacher, right? And I'm pretty sure some of you know this, but we have to clarify this because believers tend to disconnect Yeshua to his culture. And it was something that, like I told you, we have to understand that there is a culture that is intertwined that we cannot separate, right? When we separate the culture of the Bible, we lose so much context, and context is important. So he picks up the scroll, the beautiful scroll of the Torah, and he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim the liberty to the captives and recovering the sight of the blind, to set liberty to those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor," right? And so he is making a direct proclamation that he is prophesizing the Jubilee in that moment, right? So it's a prophetic moment. Yeshua not only is professing the year of Jubilee, but he is, like I told you, every time in ancient times when the year of Jubilee was established, it usually came with a new king being enthroned, right? So this is beautiful and poetic because Yeshua is letting us know that he is our king. He's our future king that will be enthroned. And by him letting us know that by him reading this scroll, he has basically declared the year of Jubilee. He rolled up the scroll and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of the synagogue were fixed on him. And he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled that you have heard." So, this is a great point to establish that our Messiah lived according to the Torah, to the commandments. The reason why he was here to direct us and guide us was for us to be directed and redirected to the commandments and to the Torah, right? But when we look at these commandments and at these ordinances, many people see them as a burden or as a very difficult obligation to do something that might be out of their way. And we have to understand something. For us believers that believe in the Bible, right? And it's something that I stress to my students is when you say you believe in the book, right? Your denomination, whatever denomination it is that you believe in, right? You have to understand that if you believe in a book, your foundational belief has to be set to the book that you believe in. The book that you are saying to believe cannot contradict your faith, because if it does, there's a big problem, right? So here Joshua is letting his people know that he is declaring the year of Jubilee. So with his future sacrifice or his future atonement for his people, he is declaring them free, which is great. And obviously the great mystery behind it, his death and resurrection, is that us believers that are not Israel can be part of the covenant. But before we get excited about being part of the covenant and celebrate, and the year of Jubilee, and we have to understand that the simplest thing is important, and that's where we miss a lot of the times. We have to understand that something as simple as keeping the Sabbath can make a really big change in our faith and our movement, because when we stand for something, we have to be very firm and consistent. We have to be very serious about this, because if we want to help people, if we want to help people be saved, we cannot yell repent, or you have demons, or you're evil, or whatever. We cannot do that, right? Yeshua told us that our fruits will speak for themselves, right? But the only way that your fruits will speak for themselves is if you're consistent and you're serious about what you say you believe, right? So the Father here, is giving us laws and instructions, but the laws and instructions are for people that understand the basic foundation of his kingdom, which is obedience, maturity, and consistency to obey him, right? Now, yes, you're not saved by actions or by works. You're saved by grace. You're saved by the Yeshua's atonement. Yes. But once you're saved, you follow his kingdom. You follow his authority, which is Elohim. He always said it. Elohim, follow my Father's commandments. Follow my Father's word, because that's where you will find the truth, right? Yeshua has come to give us an example of how to live, right? And the best example that Yeshua gave us is obedience and maturity. We have to be obedient and mature enough to understand that we have to keep the Sabbath. We have to obey the commandments. We have to do justice and righteousness. That's what the year of Jubilee is, right? Israel missed the Shemitah and the year of Jubilee because they were so focused on mechanically doing what they were supposed to that they forgot about the love and the care and the purpose of the commandment, right? They were supposed to help those in need, to be merciful to those that were coming, be a stranger or a sojourner. Why is that? Because Elohim tells them, you were a sojourner too. I took you out of the land of Egypt. You were a stranger to me, and I have taken you to me. And so now I have established these laws, and you have to make sure that you don't oppress people because you were oppressed, and I saved you. And that's the message that I want you to give the people of the world, that the same way that I saved you, if they believe in me, I can save them, right? And many of us, instead of doing that, we hug our love for God, and we hug our blessings and our personal thoughts, and we hide the lamp under the table when we're supposed to put it on top and be a light to the nations, right? So we have to be consistent, and it's very important for us youth, younger people, to be consistent, because we have an opportunity. And in my class, I've said it many times, young people, you have the opportunity that if you're in Torah, instead of focusing on if the world is flat or unnecessary things that don't edify the kingdom, You should focus on how can I grow as a young man, as a young woman in Torah. What does the Father ask for me as a future mother, wife? What was the Father asking me as a future husband or son, right? We have to build these basic things before we can reach a magnitude of goals that we personally have. And what we have to understand is that, yes, we're blessed, and we have blessings in obedience, but we should not be seeking blessings before being obedient, because we have to obey, meaning that we have to live accordingly to what the Father establishes, and from there on, blessings may come. But we have to understand that if they don't come, then we still have to be faithful. And that takes obedience and maturity to understand that we are representatives, right? Yeshua told us, that many people, misconstrue when he says that whoever sees me sees the Father, and everybody goes, oh, he says he's God, he's saying that he's God. No. It's simple. Me and my wife are one. If you see me, you see my wife. Now, that doesn't mean that she literally is me and I'm literally her. It means that we are representatives of who we are and what we establish in our home, right? So whatever we establish in our home, if I go out into the world, they're going to see what me and her have agreed to in our home, and vice versa. The same thing with Yeshua and the Father. He says that I do the will of my Father. I fulfill the kingdom's order and rules. I'm obedient, and because I am obedient, I have found grace in his eyes, and I've been resurrected from the death, and I'm here to save you too. And my message to you is, obey my Father's commandments. That's what our Messiah is telling us. Obey my Father's commandments, listen, and look for me for the example, because I've done my best to show you that obedience and maturity, right, is what's going to get us to the next level in our lifestyle, right? We're trying to be more than just a religion that says and doesn't do. We're trying to become believers that grow and are a light. And the only way you're going to be a light is going to be if you're different. And the way that you're different is there's going to be a side of the world that's going to disobey God but say that they love him. And then there's going to be a side of the world who says that they love Elohim, and they show it, and they're consistent. So I want you guys to understand that the most important points from this teaching, if I was able to teach you anything today, is be obedient and be mature to understand that you are an example. You're called to be an example, right? You're not going to be perfect, and that's normal. Nobody's perfect, but it doesn't hurt to try to become as perfect as you can. And it doesn't hurt for you to try to be better every day, right? And when people see that, okay, you might make mistakes, but you're getting better every day, better every month, every year, right? And that's in every facet of life. But in our faith and our foundation, the more we get closer to the Father in obedience, the more we mature, the more life and light comes out of us, and we show our fruit. So I hope that you guys have found this message edifying, and hope you guys have a great Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. רמזים סימנים לגלות איך נוכל עוד